Greetings and welcome to the My Xbox and Me review of Monster Hunter World, an action RPG that throws players into a rich, huge world filled with varied and gigantic monsters that you'll generally need to hunt down and kill. Players take on the role of a hunter from the 5th Fleet, sent to the New World tracking a huge monster known as Jerobolod, and must assist the already present Research Commission in learning more about the massive beast. I'm just going to get this out of the way right at the top. The actual narrative in Monster Hunter World isn't very good. You head over to the New World, an untamed wilderness filled with exotic monsters, animals and fauna, and are immediately set upon by the powerful Jerobolod. After that you end up at Estrella with the people who have already set up a large operation there, and pretty much end up being sent out endlessly to kill monsters so the rest of the hunters can set up a new camp or move into a new area. Why you, specifically, are the only one that can actually accomplish this is a mystery, given the presence of a large number of hunters already on the island. Tracking Jerobolod, unearthing secrets in new areas of the New World, and generally everything about the actual narrative is fairly dull, so it's not something you'll probably spend too much time actually dwelling on. Especially as none of it really matters. The true story of Monster Hunter World comes from your exploits as you carve your way through it. You'll fairly quickly forget who characters are or why you're wandering around looking for an Anjanath, because there are much more compelling stories waiting for you in the New World. Like that time you were hunting a Barras and a huge Diablo suddenly came bursting out of the ground looking for a fight, or when you managed to finish off the fire-breathing Anjanath after an epic hour-long conflict across pretty much the entire ancient forest. Emergent storytelling is what drives you through Monster Hunter World, and thanks to the brilliantly chaotic and unpredictable nature of the game itself, it's utterly fantastic, able to throw you many memorable moments that you'll be sharing with your friends or other Monster Hunter players long after you've forgotten most of the details of the actual narrative at play in the game. So yes, the narrative is dull, the characters are mostly uninteresting, and you'll be skipping dialogue as fast as you can push A, but the story you'll end up with after playing Monster Hunter World is brilliant. Hunting Jerobolod is simply the backdrop to your own personal adventure through the New World, brilliantly punctuated by epic, unscripted moments that are unique to your journey through Monster Hunter World. Right from the moment I was first let loose in the ancient forest, my jaw was on the floor. From that initial prehistoric-inspired starting area to the deserts, swamps, and many other wondrous environments you'll be visiting, Monster Hunter World is a thing of aesthetic beauty. The sheer amount of thought, creativity, and variety that's gone into each and every biome in the game is staggering, with each area stuffed full of more detail, both small and large, than you'll find in entire games. Nowhere is all of this more on display than in the Coral Highlands. While the ancient forest and Wildspire Wastes, which are the forest and desert levels, are gorgeous, the Coral Highlands are on another level entirely. The whole area has been created as an underwater-themed level on dry land, as if the Great Barrier Reef suddenly erupted above ground in a fantasy world, and all of its usual aquatic inhabitants suddenly adapted to their new surroundings. It's not just that the Coral Highlands looks incredible, which it absolutely does in all its saturated, colourful, breathtaking glory, especially when compared to what came before. But everything about its design, from the smallest blades of grass and the background scenery to the monsters that stalk it and the very design of the level itself, showcases some of the most detailed and well-crafted environments I've seen in a long time. Each biome is similarly impressive in looks, depth and design, of course, but it's easy to heap praise on the Coral Highlands because, well, look at it. Equally as impressive are the monsters that you'll be hunting. Each biome has its own set of wildlife that you'll need to fight or navigate around, and once again the amount of detail and creativity on display is incredibly impressive. Monsters look phenomenal, with the sheer variety and scale on offer in Monster Hunter World impressive in its own right. The way they move, the sounds they make, and the way they interact not only with the player, but the environment itself, grounds this otherwise fantastical world with a sense of realism, which is quite an impressive feat for a game that involves fire-breathing T-Rexes and dragons. The soundtrack is fine, with some pretty good orchestral tracks playing out over the action and exploration, though it does kind of fade into the background when you're in the thick of it. It's the exemplary sound effects that really draw you in, between the general ambience as you fight through or explore each environment, to the superb noises made by the monsters you're hunting. Monster Hunter World's audio design does a brilliant job of immersing you in the hunt. The voice acting could be better, with most characters' performances lacking any kind of nuance and generally only being ever okay at best. That's a minor blip that doesn't really hurt the game in any way, but it is noticeable enough to be worth mentioning. You'll spend most of your time in Monster Hunter World hunting monsters. Shocking, I know. with some fairly solid fighting mechanics that can change entirely depending on your choice of weapon. There are 14 different weapons in total, ranging from fairly simple swords and bows to more complex tools, such as the Charge Blade, which you can switch between a sword and an axe, relying on in-depth combos, as well as building and releasing stored energy. Most of the weapons in the game do come with a learning curve as you master their intricacies and learn the different moves you can chain together, the latter of which can most certainly be a challenge with some of the more difficult to master options. You'll also need to sink some time into experimenting, as these different weapons can come with radically different playstyles. I tried the longsword out for a single hunt and absolutely hated everything about it, from its speed to its attack range, its moveset and more. Once I switched over to the light bowgun, I found myself hooked by the game's combat. Everyone who plays Monster Hunter World will probably find this at some point, and given the length of time it can take to hunt a single large monster, it could potentially take a few hours before you find a weapon you're completely comfortable with. It makes talking about the core fighting mechanics of the game a little tricky. While I loved using Monster Hunter World's ranged weapons, I wasn't a massive fan of its melee combat options. Personally, I found the lock-on camera too inconsistent, as it felt like it had a habit of tethering me to the wrong target. It also made attacking specific parts of an enemy challenging, as it only ever seemed to lock my attacks to the center of a monster. I also find myself annoyed by the lack of being able to cancel out attacks, particularly on slow-paced weapons. This is also one of Monster Hunter World's strengths, however. With 14 completely different playstyles to choose from, I was able to find something that worked for me. By trying out the light bowgun, I turned the game into something close to a fast-paced, third-person shooter, and I quickly fell in love. Combat mechanics aside, monster hunting is absolutely phenomenal thanks to some impressive level design and, most importantly, some downright excellent AI. The monsters here behave like actual creatures, employing tactics, using the environment and even objects to their advantage, and retreating if you gain the upper hand in a fight. I actually felt a little sorry for some of the monsters as they tried to limp away from me after me giving them a heavy beating. Rather than simply mindlessly cycling through a set of attack patterns, it really feels like they're out to kill you. The whole ecosystem that Capcom have built for Monster Hunter World feels incredibly natural, even down to watching how animals and monsters behave and interact when you're not trying to turn them into a new pair of shoes. Speaking of which, crafting plays a huge role in Monster Hunter World. While you'll spend the first few hours following the critical mission path, the game eventually opens up to overload you with side quests, mini-objectives, and even allows you to freely explore environments. Most of these activities will reward you with something that feeds back into the game's compelling, if a little obtuse, crafting system. Rather than grant XP or abilities, you get more powerful in Monster Hunter World by crafting and upgrading gear, which allows you to hunt more powerful monsters, which in turn allows you to craft even more powerful gear. It's an addictive loop, much more so than following the story, but only once you've figured out how everything works, which can be quite difficult as the game does little to help you learn its many different systems. Once you've got the hang of it though, you'll be eagerly throwing yourself into hunt after hunt, but the game could have done with explaining how everything fits together a little better, as there were certain mechanics I couldn't figure out without the help of more seasoned players. The same can be said for multiplayer, which can be a pain to actually set up if you're trying to play with friends. Rather than feature drop-in, drop-out co-op, you'll need to jump through several hoops to party up, and the game places some bafflingly archaic barriers to entry, such as not allowing players at different points of the story to play story missions with each other, or not letting players use the same instance of the hub area. Once you're on the hunt together, you'll be having a great time. This is a seriously excellent game to play with friends, but it'll take a bit of work to actually get together in the first place. As a first-time player of the franchise, I found Monster Hunter World to be an incredible game. While I found it a challenge to figure out how its many systems fit together, once I grasped the basics and found a weapon I enjoyed using, I was completely hooked, with the game sucking up hours of my time without me even realizing how long I'd been playing. World was such a great choice of subtitle too. Capcom have created some incredible environments and packed them with an astounding amount of detail. Combine that with the intelligent and natural feeling monsters, and you've got a terrifically immersive world that you'll have a hard time stepping away from, with a core gameplay loop that'll have you constantly coming back for more. Thanks very much for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving us a like, comment, or even subscribing to the channel. And as always, keep it here at My Xbox and Me for more reviews, commentary, let's plays, and a weekly podcast. Have a great day, guys.